Arnold's secret son appears on his birthday. His reaction left everyone moved. The grand ballroom of the Beverly Hills Hotel shimmered with opulence and celebration. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm golden glow over the assembled guests, their light dancing off champagne flutes and designer gowns. The air was filled with the gentle murmur of conversation, punctuated by bursts of laughter and the soft strains of a live orchestra playing in the corner. The scent of expensive perfume mingled with the aroma of gourmet hors d'oeuvres being passed on silver trays. It was Arnold Schwarzenegger's 75th birthday, and Hollywood's elite had gathered to celebrate the life and legacy of a true icon. At the center of it all, Arnold stood in an impeccably tailored suit, his powerful frame still commanding despite the years. His face weathered but warm as he greeted guests, shook hands, and accepted well wishes with genuine gratitude. The evening had been meticulously planned. There were speeches from old friends and colleagues, video tributes from world leaders and fellow actors, and a slideshow chronicling his extraordinary journey from a small Austrian village to the pinnacle of success in bodybuilding, film, and politics. Arnold's family surrounded him, his children laughing and sharing stories, his loved ones basking in the warmth of the celebration. The atmosphere was one of joy, nostalgia, and profound respect. Yet beneath the surface of smiles and champagne toasts, there was an undercurrent of something unspoken, a shadow that had lingered for years in the corners of Arnold's life, known to some, but never publicly acknowledged in such a setting. As the evening progressed and the speeches concluded, the master of ceremonies announced that there would be one final surprise guest. The room fell into an expectant hush, guests exchanging curious glances. Arnold himself looked puzzled, glancing at his family members, who seemed equally surprised. The orchestra fell silent. The grand doors at the far end of the ballroom slowly opened, and a young man stepped through. He was in his mid-20s, tall and powerfully built, with a familiar jawline and piercing blue eyes that seemed to mirror Arnold's own. He wore a simple, well-fitted suit, and his expression was a mixture of nervousness, determination, and something deeper, something raw and vulnerable. The room held its collective breath as the young man walked slowly down the center aisle, his footsteps echoing in the sudden, profound silence. Arnold's face, which had been open and jovial moments before, now registered a complex cascade of emotions. Recognition flickered in his eyes, followed by shock, then a deep, almost painful vulnerability. His hand, which had been holding a champagne glass, trembled slightly. The young man stopped a few feet away from Arnold. His eyes walked on the older man's face. "Hello, Dad," he said, his voice steady but thick with emotion. "My name is Joseph. I know this isn't the time or place you might have chosen, but I needed to be here. I needed to see you on your birthday." The words hung in the air like a confession, a truth that could no longer be hidden. The guests, initially confused, now began to understand, whispers rippling through the crowd like a wave. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Have you ever witnessed a moment of profound, unexpected reconciliation? This moment, unplanned and raw, would become one of the most defining of Arnold's life, not for his achievements or his fame, but for his humanity. And if you're wondering what happens next, how Arnold will respond to this public revelation, this brave act from a son he had kept in the shadows, make sure you're subscribed to the channel right now. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because you won't want to miss the powerful, emotional response that follows. A moment that will leave everyone in that ballroom and everyone watching deeply moved. For a long moment, Arnold simply stood there, frozen. His eyes, usually so confident and commanding, now glistened with unshed tears. His jaw worked silently, as if searching for words that had been buried for too long. Joseph, standing before him, waited, his own eyes brimming with emotion, his hands clenched at his sides. The silence in the ballroom was deafening, every guest holding their breath, witnessing something deeply personal, something that transcended the glitz and glamour of the celebration. The first subtle sign of Arnold's true reaction wasn't a word, but a physical transformation. His shoulders, which had been squared and proud, now seemed to sag slightly, as if a great weight he had been carrying for years was finally being acknowledged. His hands, which had shaken countless hands that evening with practiced ease, now trembled openly. A single tear escaped his eye, tracing a slow path down his weathered cheek. He didn't wipe it away. He let it fall, a silent acknowledgement of the pain, the regret, and the love that had been kept hidden for so long. Then, slowly, almost hesitantly, Arnold took a step forward. Then another. His movements were no longer those of the confident action hero or the commanding politician, but of a father, vulnerable and human. He closed the distance between himself and Joseph, his eyes never leaving the young man's face. When he finally stood directly in front of his son, he raised his hand, not to shake, but to gently touch Joseph's face, his large palm cupping his son's cheek. "Joseph," he whispered, his voice breaking, thick with emotion. "My son." The revelation of Arnold's true feelings, the depth of his emotion, hit the room like a tidal wave. Gasps rippled through the crowd, followed by a profound, respectful silence. Some guests wiped tears from their own eyes, moved by the raw honesty of the moment. Arnold's other children, initially shocked, now watched with a mixture of complex emotions, their faces reflecting understanding, sadness, and perhaps a dawning acceptance. Arnold pulled Joseph into a tight embrace, his powerful arms wrapping around his son, holding him as if he might disappear. Joseph, his own composure breaking, buried his face in his father's shoulder, his body shaking with silent sobs. Arnold held him for a long moment, the two of them standing in the center of the ballroom, oblivious to the hundreds of eyes watching. When they finally pulled apart, Arnold kept his hands on Joseph's shoulders, looking into his eyes with an intensity that spoke of years of unspoken words. "I am so sorry," Arnold said, his voice raw and unguarded. "I'm so sorry for the years I was not there, for the pain I caused, for keeping you in the shadows." His accent, usually so controlled, now wavered with emotion. "You deserved better. You deserved a father who was present, who was proud of you publicly, not just privately." Joseph, tears streaming down his face, shook his head. "I didn't come here to make you feel guilty, Dad. I came because I wanted you to know that despite everything, despite the years, I love you. And I wanted to be here on your birthday to celebrate the man you are, the good you've done, and to finally stand beside you, not in the shadows, but in the light." His words, spoken with such sincerity and courage, broke through the last of Arnold's defenses. The older man's face crumpled, and he pulled Joseph into another embrace, this one even tighter, even more desperate. The ballroom, which had been filled with the sounds of celebration, was now filled with the sounds of quiet weeping, not just from Arnold and Joseph, but from many of the guests. It was a moment of profound humanity, a reminder that even legends, even icons, are flawed, vulnerable human beings, capable of making mistakes, and more importantly, capable of redemption and love. The orchestra, sensing the gravity of the moment, remained silent, allowing the raw emotion to fill the space. Arnold finally released Joseph, stepping back slightly, but keeping one hand on his son's shoulder, as if afraid to let go completely. He turned to face the assembled guests, his face still wet with tears, his voice thick but steady. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his accent more pronounced in his emotional state, "this is my son, Joseph, and I am proud of him. I have made many mistakes in my life, and one of the biggest was not being the father he deserved from the beginning. But he is here now, and I want the world to know that I love him." The room erupted in applause, not the polite celebratory applause of earlier, but a thunderous, emotional ovation. People stood, their hands coming together in a powerful show of support and respect. Arnold's other children, after a moment of hesitation, also stood and began to applaud, their faces reflecting a complex mix of emotions, but ultimately acceptance. Joseph, overwhelmed by the response, looked around the room, then back at his father, a smile breaking through his tears. Arnold then did something unexpected. He took Joseph's hand and raised it high, like a champion raising the hand of a fellow victor. "This," he said, his voice now stronger, filled with a newfound resolve, "is what true strength looks like. Not the muscles, not the fame, not the power, but the courage to stand up, to speak your truth, and to seek connection despite the pain." He looked at Joseph with profound admiration. "You are braver than I ever was." The main confrontation, though not a traditional battle, was an internal one, a confrontation with Arnold's own past, his own mistakes, and his own capacity for love and redemption. Joseph's arrival forced Arnold to face the consequences of his actions publicly, to acknowledge a truth he had kept hidden, and to respond not with defensiveness or denial, but with vulnerability and love. His technique wasn't about control or dominance, but about surrender, about opening his heart completely. Arnold's emotional response grew with each passing moment, his initial shock giving way to profound gratitude and love. His attempts to maintain his public persona crumbled under the weight of genuine emotion. The crowd's reaction shifted from initial shock and confusion to deep empathy and respect, witnessing a powerful moment of human connection that transcended celebrity and status. Arnold's control, which had defined so much of his life and career, was relinquished in this moment. He demonstrated that true strength wasn't about maintaining a facade, but about being authentic, vulnerable, and willing to admit fault. His superiority wasn't in his achievements, but in his capacity for growth, for acknowledging his mistakes, and for choosing love over pride. The climax of this deeply personal moment wasn't a dramatic gesture, but the simple, profound act of a father embracing his son and publicly acknowledging him. It was a moment of pure, unadulterated truth that shattered any remaining walls between them. The silence that had preceded the embrace was replaced by the thunderous applause of acceptance and support. Arnold then turned to the rest of his family, his other children, and extended his arm, inviting them to join him and Joseph. After a moment, they came forward one by one, forming a circle around Arnold and Joseph. It wasn't a perfect moment, and the complexity of the situation was evident on their faces. But it was a beginning, a step towards healing and unity. Arnold looked at each of them, his eyes filled with love and gratitude. "Family," he said simply, "is everything, and sometimes it takes courage to make it whole." The complete transformation of the evening was absolute. What had begun as a celebration of Arnold's achievements became a celebration of his humanity, his capacity for love, and his willingness to grow. The change in the room's atmosphere was profound. The guests, initially there to honor a legend, now felt they had witnessed something far more meaningful, a moment of genuine human connection and redemption. As the evening continued, Arnold and Joseph stood together, talking quietly, laughing through their tears, beginning the long process of truly knowing each other. The other guests, moved by what they had witnessed, approached not just to congratulate Arnold on his birthday, but to express their admiration for his courage and his heart. The celebration took on a new, deeper meaning, a reminder that life's greatest achievements aren't always the public ones, but the private moments of connection, forgiveness, and love. The moral of the story, echoing through the hearts of everyone present, was clear and powerful. Respect isn't just earned through achievements and accolades. It's earned through honesty, vulnerability, and the courage to face our mistakes. Silent doesn't mean powerless. Sometimes the most powerful moments are the quiet ones, where love breaks through the walls we've built, and where a father and son can finally stand together, not in shadow, but in light.